Right, so right now I'm on Tower Bridge. The reason we're back in the studio now is that it was pretty challenging to film myself in the street shooting and do the POV as well, because the GFX 50S is actually pretty heavy, and after a while I felt a little bit uncomfortable, or let's say tired, of holding it with one hand and taking picture with the iPhone while I was shooting. And also, because it's so heavy, I often had to hold it with both hands and also look in the viewfinder to see where I was focusing. So yeah, I missed a lot of filming, and I decided I would go the review here in the studio. So what do I think about the GFX 50S? It's a great camera, don't get me wrong, the image quality is fantastic. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. It's just over 50 megapixels, and it's medium format or large scale format, depending on how you want to call it. And it gets a very broad dynamic range. And when you look at the file of the computers, and we're going to look at them later, you're just astonished by what you see on screen. The problems I had with this is that it is heavy to hold when you're in the street, and it's also quite slow to shoot. So the continuous mode, which is the equivalent of the burst mode in the XT series, or probably in the X Pro as well, is actually one frame every 1.5 seconds. So it's really not great for anything fast-paced or for action or for anything happening in the street. Take great images. So if you're out, find a place, you find some good lights and shadows, you find a corner that you want to shoot, or you find something static, then you take your time, take the pictures that you want, and then it's perfect, it's fantastic. But if something is fast-paced, or sometimes I should burst mode to make sure that I get the exact moment that I want to capture, then this one is probably not ideal. I don't know about the GFX 50R, that's the rangefinder version, it's probably better suited for that. This one, I believe, it's better for landscape and studio. So if you sit the camera on a tripod and you have all the time in the world, pretty much, then it's absolutely ideal. This is fantastic. And I shot a very nice sunset in London with this one, in these exact same conditions, on a tripod, plenty of time, and the results were absolutely fantastic. So the lenses I used in these 24 hours were the 32-64, which in the 35mm format are equivalent to 25-50-ish, which is kind of an ideal range in the street really. So I was hoping to get good results out of it. And then I also had the 110mm, which is a 90mm equivalent, f2, and it's absolutely fantastic for portrait. Same as the 90mm for the X series. This is a really, really good lens for portraits. Now, why the medium format or large scale format makes so much difference? Think about the smartphone that you have in your pockets every day. Nowadays, those tiny devices, they're perfectly capable of taking good pictures, and the sensor is basically the size of a nail. On this camera, the sensor is this large. So you can imagine how much more information it can retain in the lights, in the shadows, in the details. This is just phenomenal. And I had used medium format in the past, working in museums in Florence, using a medium format, a Hasselblad camera, to digitize most of the paintings and the masterpieces in these museums. So it's not something that's entirely new to me, but still the quality that I saw in this GFX system, that was really, really mind-blowing. So yeah, larger sensor, but also you can see the size of the lens itself. Now this is a 25-50 equivalent. Now if I get, for example, the 35mm that I use all the time in the streets together with the 23, this is the 35 f2mm that I use on the X-T4. And you can see the size difference. And the 35 is really, really good on the XT series. But you can tell that the glass here is gonna make quite the difference. Now, of course, it has the image quality and the colors that I'm used to with the Fujifilm. You have the same film simulations in the GFX system that you have in the X series as well, including some recent ones like Classic Negative and Eterna, which are slowly becoming some of my favorites. So yeah, absolutely fantastic quality. So if you can get past being slowed down by the weight and the speed of shooting, then you can get rewarded with some very, very beautiful images. Phenomenal, really. And if you come from the XT series, everything will be pretty familiar to you, because you have kind of the same dials on top of the camera, except for the exposure compensation, which is now a button, and the drive settings, which rather than being under the ISO dial, they're now behind the button here as well. You can turn the dials, press the buttons, and you're done. The camera is set, and it's going to take all the pictures that you want. Now, one great benefit of producing images that are so large and so detailed is that you can print them really, really big. You probably won't notice much difference if you publish these images on social media, unless maybe on the dynamic range side of things. But the files you get from the GFX 50S can be printed really, really large. I printed an Pt.2 file 2 meters wide, and the resolution on this camera is twice as much, with a lot more detail. But I think that rather than staring at me holding the camera and talking about this camera, it's better if you go to the computer and see the files and talk about the images that this camera takes.